Last time we said volleyball is about feet, and that applies to defense as well. Today we'll explore it and outline the path from youth volleyball to the championship. We'll go back to the feet in situations when the player is not in contact with the ball. What do they do when it seems like nothing is happening? Aren't they the ones who quietly set the tone for the next action?
The game in the field, a bit like waiting for Godot. Long minutes of nothing, and then a lightning bolt from out of nowhere. Meanwhile, the feet keep working, even in silence, at full throttle, as we see with Italy's libero Fabio Balasso. That's why in training, we endure long waits and many failed attempts. How else does craftsmanship mature?
Before the action, we alternate locomotion movements sideways, but most often backward. Isn't it strange that sometimes the way forward begins with a step backward? That's why we step back, so we can have the energy for the next move forward and adjust our position to keep calm with our hands. Those who are prepared are not caught off guard. They're more likely to smile, knowing it was expected.
The masters of defense? The Japanese. But before you reach such a level, a pilgrimage awaits. Hundreds of small steps without touching the ball, the quiet rustling of sneakers, and patience. Why so much effort? The ball is capricious and will arrive when it decides. Only then, if you don't miss that moment, can true defensive work take place. Low posture, soft forearms, clean contact, long-lasting connection with the ball, just like with top-level players here.
Where to begin? Of course, at the foundation of volleyball. Can you build a house without a foundation? Basic steps, dry, slight weight shifts, toes springing, soft knees, nose over the toes. It's like when your feet whisper with the ball that hasn't arrived yet. Catching after a lateral movement, 1-2 stop catch. At the end, calm, not chaos. And the pole? The most patient teacher in the gym. Keeps the arms forward and doesn't allow them to slip to the sides. Then catching after a lateral movement followed by backward movement. Only when this metronome in the ankles ticks does defense begin to sound. But watch out, hard work isn't only for the first contact after the opponent's attack. It must be just as diligent on the second contact when a teammate has already controlled the ball. Isn't it strange that you run the most when it looks like almost nothing's happening? This 14-year-old, great, runs one way, and as the situation changes, smartly switches, 2 steps, half a turn, calm shoulders. And the same on the third touch after 2 team contacts. Feet in readiness, head open, last touch at the right spot. Who wouldn't want such a little timekeeper in defense?
The positioning for digging is largely controlled by the block. As you can see here, the player didn't touch the ball, but they positioned themselves correctly in the gap between the block. Without a change in the direction of the ball's flight by the block, they would have had a good chance, but the game is unpredictable. And of course, we also react to block deflections or tips. The key players? Of course, the head, but also its loyal servants, the feet.
Especially in women's volleyball, we see situations where defense actually outplays the attack. How is that possible? Isn't it because women rely less on brute strength and more on cleverness, placement, and patience? And let's add one more secret ingredient: immense sacrifice. But beware, this sacrifice doesn't come only from the heart, but also from the feet. The defense may look like a series of heroic falls, but in reality, it's a pre-arranged dance of ankles and calves. Without this silent work, sacrifice would only be a late fall and a cheap gesture. The attack may have the last word, but defense often writes it with the feet.
Defense happens through the movement of entire formations, but we'll leave that for another time. For example, here, the positioning isn't ideal because the players are lined up behind each other like at the checkout in a supermarket. After all the strategic preparatory footwork, the final act of the action comes, movement toward the falling ball and reception. But that's not our topic today. Today, we're interested in the feet and their movement in actions outside of contact with the ball. And yes, we'll endure a lot of failures. That's volleyball.
Next chapter, attacking after defense or stepping away from the net as part of defensive tasks. How do you turn chaos into an orchestra in one rally? The ball was just crawling on the floor and now we want to attack. So, the feet switch gears. A quick step into open space, turning the body toward the setter and the attacker's approach. A bit of madness when save has to turn into attack in one breath. This chain of movement is refined throughout life, but we start the basics at 13. Stepping away from the net, pivot, step over, run up, spike. Why such pedantry? Because seconds and half a meter decide whether the attack is on time or just on good faith. We give the kids this metronome in their feet and simple advice in their heads. Push so you can step away in time. You know, it doesn't always go according to the book, and sometimes there's no time for a full run-up, but we have to deal with it.
Now, let's take a look at a brilliant example of the anonymous work of Czech national team player Galabov. A repeated touch in the field after a previous locomotion movement, followed by an offer to attack for the pipe combination. Vashina will get the admiration, but respect goes to Galabov for his excellent supportive work.
What we said for field work also applies after a block. Again, the action, quickly step away, adjust your position, run up, spike. We've been sharpening this pattern from a young age, and time and again we adapt the children to the fact that they have very little time for this action in the game. Therefore, the run-up is often what we call on the dime. But even after minimal run-up, the attack must still happen. And now the same from the right. Hopefully, our young players will one day reach the mastery of defalco. After the block, they run the entire net to the left and attack immediately without hesitation. And that's why we train the steps before we start counting points.